Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, everybody. Welcome to this webinar on innovating the claims lifecycle, looking at operational efficiencies that drive profitability. My name's Graham Proud. I'm founder of the Lighthouse Collective. This is part of a series of webinars around insurance claims with our partners Clearspeed. And today, yes, we are turning our head towards the operational efficiency perspective as part of that claims process. We're very fortunate to have some excellent speakers with us today representing the UK market. We have Andrew Fairclough, Operational Excellence Leader, Group Claims at Zurich UK, and also Nicholas Kelsall, Head of Insurance Claims at Allianz. Jeanette Hernandez from Clearspeed will also be part of this panel. So we've got a really good balanced view of the claims picture in this sense. I would remind everybody, if you do have any questions that occur to you during the session, simply pop them in the chat feature and we can address those towards the end of the session. In terms of how it's going to work, we're going to have some brief introductions from our speakers just to give a little bit of context as to where they're working, what they're focusing on, why this topic is a big part of what they do. And then we'll hit some big questions around the piece. So it's my pleasure to pass over to Andrew first for a couple of minutes to kick things off. Andrew, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks, Graham, and hi, everybody. Thanks for the invite to join today's panel. I'm looking forward to the conversation. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Andrew Fairclough, and I have the privilege to lead operational excellence in claims at Zurich. I've been with Zurich now for 20 years, but I've worked in the industry for over 30, always in claims. My current role, one of the things I'm responsible for is driving innovation across Zurich claims functions globally, both P&C and life. So my remit extends beyond the UK. In terms of an interest for this sort of topic, well, first and foremost, it's my job to look at innovation and to drive it through. In terms of the importance, look, we all know, the pace of innovation is probably greater than we've seen forever in this industry. And Zurich needs to make sure that we're at the forefront of understanding what's out there and how that can best fit our business. And in terms of priorities, for me, the prioritization with this amount of innovation that's happening right now is the balance. It's getting a balance right, a balance between our customers' needs and wants and ensuring that we continue to deliver for them.
Thanks, Andrew. It's certainly a big job you've got there in terms of what you're trying to achieve, and you're doing good things. So I look forward to hearing a bit more detail on the innovation at Zurich, and like you say, that balance between customer needs and the operational efficiency side. It's a big one. So Nick, over to you next. How does that compare to what you're focusing on and where you sit within claims?
Yeah, thanks, Graham. Thanks, Andrew. Afternoon, everybody. When Graham first invited me to talk on this panel, I thought it was a really interesting topic. Lots of our focus has been around sort of AI, automation. And I like that this is bringing it back to its core principles, right? Serving our customers and making money. And let's be honest, that's what we're here to do. Let's not beat around the bush. And the word profit was the one that sort of stuck out for me. And we've been in a challenging environment over the many years, as you'll know, and I'll come on to sort of my role in that in a second. But we have been struggling to make underwriting profits with high inflation, and we haven't really didn't foresee that. I think as an industry and openly at Allianz, we didn't. So we've been building in future pricing to sort of pay for some sort of past inflation. So we've been under a lot of pressure to pull on more levers than ever before to try and maximize, I guess, our operational efficiency, which is the title of this topic. But I'll try and talk about in some of the deep dives and the questions. I think we should be focusing our attention on operational effectiveness. which is where my role really comes in. Currently sort of head of insurance claims for specialising in motor for Allianz UK. My underwriting colleagues would say I'm the one that spends the money, I guess, but I also had a variety of roles driving sort of global change across the Allianz group, similar to Andrew, aligning best practices and data sets and IT and things like that across the Allianz group. And I think what I'd start by saying, what are our priorities? I think it's some things that are within our control, and there's some things that are outside of our control. And I certainly don't have all the answers. But I have a great team around me at the moment that are looking to mitigate and innovate our way through this sort of difficult environment. So I'm looking forward to the debate today. I'd encourage questions because I think that'll help some of my thought process and thinking on our feet. So please be challenging in the questions. And in terms of our priorities, I just want to simplify this really, I think, in terms of business. And in some of the questions, I think we'll talk about specific levers around that. But there's three simple elements for me. We're here to grow our business. I don't think anyone goes into business looking to shrink. We're here to make money. We're here to make a profit. And we're here to deliver on our sort of corporate and social responsibilities, so things like ESG, diversity, in the workplace. And then it comes down to sort of three simple things, really. So how do we better control loss ratios? How do we control our expenses? How do we control expense ratios? And then underpinning all that is how do we delight our customers, continue to deliver our customers? And I think getting that balance right is going to be the difference between successful businesses and failing businesses in this sort of time of unprecedented change and competition within the market. So looking forward to the chat ahead, Graham.
Thanks, Nick. And glad you used the term operational effectiveness. I think that's key. I think that tunes in very keenly when we talk about business profitability and responding to challenging environments within certain insurance markets. Those outside factors, like you pointed out, we can't control. So we look internally to see what can we change to make sure that we tread the right path. Jeanette, I'll come to you. You're sitting outside of an insurance carrier, obviously, but partnerships, technology partners, and collaboration are key. How are you guys affecting the claims process? And can you just give a very short flavor of where Clearspeed sit and what you do within that?
Sure. So I'm head of global insurance services for Clearspeed. While I am outside for the past 25 years, I was in the P&C side in claims. So it's kind of unique for me to come outside instead of doing innovation and operational efficiencies within one organization. I'm able to help multiple organizations at once. And I think the challenge for us is, we've all invested over the past decade more money than we've ever invested in people, process, and technology. So what we're looking at now is to what Nick was saying, how do we pay what we owe promptly and fairly and run our business as efficiently as possible while delighting the customer? So for us at Clearspeed, it's about helping you get the right claim in the right hands at the right time, so you can adjudicate that claim and have confidence with what our technology does is allows you really to clear the claims that you can pay based on the technology. And we augment whatever process that you may have in place. And as much as we talk about touchless claims where we strive to get there, and some of that's done online for ethanol, there's always going to be a human element in certain parts of claims. So Clearspeed offers an additional data point in order for that adjuster to make a decision to help with those operational efficiencies.
Thanks, Jeanette. That makes a lot of sense, and clearly zooms in on the piece that you guys work on, but also the wider picture. You're right on board with the other guys too. So, Andrew, if we come back to you for a little more detail when we talk about the challenges that you're currently facing. You're pushing innovation. You mentioned P&C and life. It's not only the UK, but other markets too. How do you distill all of that down into what you need to immediately face and prioritize over the next coming months? That must be, hugely challenging. So what's your process behind that, and what do you see as the main things that you need to address?
Yeah, so look, at Zurich, our Group Chief Claims Officer, Ian Thompson, has set us sort of 4 strategic pillars that he believes are going to shape the claims function of the future. And that's been customer obsessed, data driven, creating what we refer to as a bionic workforce, and truly sustainable. A lot of the points that were picked up by Jeanette and Nick. So they're the 4 pillars that we're working to, and then we use other levers to try and bring that together. So we've created what we call our Global Claims Blueprint, which is a framework for all of our claims units globally, to basically set ambition criteria, what we believe a claims function of the future should look like. And to pick up on your point there, Graham, our vision isn't a short-term sort of month-on-month. This is a 3-year strategy aligned to our group strategic cycle. So we've worked with all of our business units globally to identify, who's where, what stage of this journey. And the blueprint covers multiple topics, from customer interaction through the role of intermediaries, through straight through process, segmentation, assignment, data, technology. So it covers a multitude of different areas, and a key one is sustainability. And so we've used that blueprint to basically highlight for us what stage of development are each of our countries at, be it P&C and Life, be it some of our large units like in North America, or some of our tiny units, say, in China. So we expect everybody to work towards this blueprint. And from there, that's allowing us now to identify where do we have pain points, and where do we have pain points that are common. So we know that there are different drivers in different markets. Some of our markets are purely P&C, some are purely life, some are composite, some are purely retail, some are commercial. So it's not a one size fits all, but the blueprint is there really to try and help us to get each and every one of those claims functions to become the best they can be. So we will immediately look at, for those business units that are hitting this out of the park, what can we take from those countries by way of learnings? Can we export it? Can we bottle it? Can we take it around the world? Equally as well, then, where there are no solutions already in place, how do we look to maybe develop it ourselves? Is it already sitting in another function, for example? How do we use sources such as, I'm sure you'll be familiar with, the Zurich Innovation Championship, which is a startup competition. This year we had over 3,500 submissions. And really, how do we use those? Not just the ones that have got through to the final stages, but how do we use all of those 3,500 to try and again identify those gaps? And also as well, then work with established vendors that we're already working with to see whether or not there is opportunity to expand what they've got into other regions. So we're pulling on as many different things as we have internally, Graham. We work a lot with our group tech and ops team to try and understand, what is out there. And also as well, Zurich are very much moving towards, and we develop technologies and innovations ourselves internally. So we're starting to build a very strong set of group internal assets that we want to tap into, we want to grow, we want to expand.
Thanks, Andrew. I mean, the immediately interesting point that comes to mind when you talk about the international strategy with different business units, you look across where are we within the journey in those different markets, and you apply best practices unilaterally where they make sense. What's the key unique factor that makes one market more successful than another? Is it tuning into customers in terms of the local marketplaces, or what's the variable factors there?
Yeah, so well, for me, of the 4 pillars, that customer obsession is key. And we know, as Nick mentioned it, as we move into a softer market, it's going to be difficult for a lot of carriers globally. So we've got to be laser focused on what it is that the customer truly wants, rather than perhaps we assuming what they need. So we've got to keep that core. And in some markets, you know, it's potentially easier. You know, again, Nick referenced the rise of claims inflation. Everybody's talking about claims inflation. And is the way to address that by simply hiking up rates? Yeah, that would be the easy answer. But it's not that simple, because in some markets, the amount of rate that you can increase by is regulated. So you can't do that. But also as well, you know, not insurance isn't sold or bought the same everywhere else. So for example, in some Latin American countries, Brazil, Mexico, motor insurance is not compulsory. You don't need it by law. So that's a very different customer dynamic that you've got to try and manage. Any increase in premiums there is going to have an impact. And if you do it as a market, you know, if the insurance market do it, customers may well decide, you know what, I'll take a year off. I won't bother. I don't need it. So there is not a one size fits all. I think it's about working, you know, maybe as an industry collectively, Graham. But the key thing is you've got to understand what your customers' needs are. And let's be honest, none of us, if none of us have customers, we have no business, right? We have no industry. That's key. It's never going to change. And so the point that we as insurers become irrelevant, then we really need to start worrying. So we've got to make sure that, for me, front and center, it's about the customers' needs and wants and making sure we deliver for them.
Absolutely. Nick, how does that sound to you? I know you mentioned earlier that you're tuned into the auto insurance market in the UK. Where do your priorities sit when you're focused on that market? Obviously, it's not an easy market at the time. At the moment, it's difficult when we look at auto and in terms of profitability and the marketplace. So, what are your priorities when we look at operational effectiveness and claims?
Yeah, I think it's because we are in a challenging environment. It's a bit like COVID, right? You know, it didn't really change what our vision was for financial services and an office environment. It just accelerated it because of the need to have a hybrid working situation. So everyone was able to do it really quickly. And I think the high inflation environment's probably done the same, not just in auto, but in all lines of business, in all areas. And I'm glad you sort of flipped this question now, because I think in terms of what's in our control and out of our control, as I said in my intro, I think there's some things out of our control in terms of price of parts, and we can do some things about that, but the effort's probably disproportionate to the benefit. So you look internally, and then your internal questions will be, okay, so you need to improve your operational efficiency by X%. But what does that really mean? What it really means is the business wants you to deliver the same results by spending less money. And the answer sometimes has to be no. I think Andrew touched on this, because essentially we're a customer facing team, and sometimes it's the only time that the customer interacts with our business, and we need to wow them, right? Because if they have a claim, we need them to come back and spend more premium with us to cover the costs of that claim, or we need to grow, right? We're running a profitable business. That's the rationale. So I think you touched on it, Graham. The question should be, how do we improve operational effectiveness, and how do we improve our operations output whilst controlling costs and controlling spend? And I've had a little sneak preview of one of the Q&A, so I'll try and touch on that in Gary's question as well, because I think it's right. It doesn't necessarily need to be a balance between efficiency and customer. What you can do is benefit both by doing the right things, by getting rid of waste, which is effectively, we've all got waste in our legacy systems, waste in our processes. So how do we better streamline our processes, controlling the things we can control that benefit both the operation and the customer journey, which is where our focus solely is at Allianz, and we think they go hand in hand. We talked about IT, we talked about innovation. I think the problem with IT investment, which is where everything goes in technology, and I know Clearspeed will talk about this as well, but we're all bought into the impact of investment, but the return on investment with IT may not be this year. So I think you need to have an IT strategy, and as Andrew's talked about, 3-year strategy probably feels about right for delivering IT change. But our P&L balance sheet return is this financial year, right? So we can't just sit there and sort of complain about that. We're in a world where it's hard to attract talent. So I'm not sitting here being negative. So what are Allianz doing, I guess, in the control of the controllables? And I think simplification is the word I'd use the most. Simplification underpins everything we're trying to do. We're trying to simplify our products, simplify our processes, get rid of that red tape, make the less friction for our customers, our internal handlers. Under the strapline, sort of less is more. We're actually asking for less data, believe it or not, from our customers, because we won't do anything with it. So we're asking for more valuable data, and we're looking to deliver and measure. And a lot of the time we turn something on, they forget to measure it. Where if we actually measure it and show the business it's delivering benefit, then they can build that into their future pricing models way in advance. So effectively, we're reviewing our products, we're putting process first, then we're looking at our assets, so internal and external assets. What do we need to deliver that process? Are the things that we own? Are the things that we can leverage our wider group for? Are the things we need to partner with our strategic external providers? And then lastly, I'd suggest that you look at your IT infrastructure and then build your IT infrastructure, your future IT infrastructure around that new process and around those strategic partners. Like doing it the other way around makes no sense. I think we've done that in the past as an industry. If you're building your processes around legacy IT, I think you're in a dangerous place. It's, just to say that aloud, it sounds ludicrous, right? So Allianz, it's all about that simplification, process first, invest in our people, customer at the heart of everything we do under the banner of customer centricity, similar to what Andrew's touched on. And I think that the two do go hand in hand, in answer to sort of Gary Lobb's point in the Q&A.
Thanks, Nick. Jeanette, I'd be interested to hear your point of view here, because obviously you've worked in insurance for a huge part of your career. And Nick mentioned, building on top of legacy, and the pitfalls of that. And as an industry, the pitfalls that we've often fell into. What are you noticing, and listening to Andrew and Nick, what are you noticing are the key priorities for insurers at the moment, and how are Clearspeed acting on that? I know definitely simplification is an area where Clearspeed can impact, making the processes simpler and quicker. But what are your thoughts on how we're set?
I think there's multiple challenges, right, in the marketplace to what Andrew is saying. We're seeing change at a rate we've never seen in our industry. Usually especially from a technology perspective, we're always 10 years behind, but that's not so anymore, because our customers are able to obtain data and information at a speed which, no one can keep up with. If you want to answer a question, you just go to Google, type it in, and within seconds you have an answer. If you want to order something online, have it shipped to your house, they're used to that expedient feel in their life. So that's the challenge for the insurers, whether it's an application, if you're applying for life insurance or auto insurance, how do you make that process less manual, where it has to go through the underwriters where they're visually seeing it? Is there technology that you can ask, say in Clearspeed's perspective? We have 3 questions. If you identify areas of risk in a specific country or a specific part of your business, now you're able to expedite and be more efficient in the process with a level of confidence, because our technology is backed by science. So this isn't something where it's guesswork, or you have an adjuster making a decision. Yes, this looks like a risky policyholder. We're going to, not allow them to go through the rest of the underwriting process, or the claims adjuster receiving a claim in auto saying, there's something suspicious about this theft. Let me think about it and use my expertise before I transfer it over to SIU. All of those breaks in the process have an impact not only on the customer experience, but also on cost, right? So for a life policy, if you're doing your traditional process of underwriting where you're sending someone out, you ask them the questions, do you smoke? Do you have any pre-existing conditions? But then you send the medical expert out to take the blood samples, to go through all of that. If you had something like technology that Clearspeed offers earlier in the process, you could avoid perhaps someone saying, yes, I've never smoked before. They answer the questionnaire, comes back from Clearspeed. It says, no, in fact, there is risk in what they're saying, which allows either that underwriter to probe or to come back and say, no, we have to make another decision with this policyholder about what we want to do, which you wouldn't have if it was going through that normal process. So I think it's using legacy systems inherently, because they're not kept up with the technology, right? So upgrades, the maintenance, all the things that your IT team has to do, that takes away from the prioritization when you're trying, like Andrew's doing. Hey, we found all this amazing innovation in technology or process in the industry, but now it has to be prioritized because you're just learning how to do the maintenance on the legacy system. So I think most companies have gone through the journey already and transferred over to a singular system, whether it's a policy system or a claim system. But as you do that, it's really critical to make sure, and I think Andrew hit on something really critical. If you've not evaluated what your internal resources are, so right butts, right seats, the talent to either develop technology or improve your process, how do you look outside of your organization for the right partners to accomplish those goals, right? Andrew and Nick are both spot on. We're all here to make money, but how do you do it in a way where also, I can't say globally that I've seen it, but I can say for sure in the States, we have turnover rates with new talent at rates we've never seen before. So you don't have that level, whether it's in underwriting or claims, of expertise to really identify what you need in the process to pay the claim promptly and fairly.
Thanks, Jeanette. I think you've made 3 or 4 really important points there. The one thing that I would lean off is that we're all sat in a situation now where, from the customer point of view, you almost, I know, Andrew, you were talking earlier about assessing marketplaces and listening to the customer, not assuming anything, and applying processes, technologies, and operations that are respondent to the customer needs. But we are at the point where the customer need is so high, you have to assume that the speed has to be almost immediate, the clarity has to be there, the communication has to be excellent. People do not accept anything less. So moving back from that a little bit and taking that as read, and moving back towards profitability and where we can make a difference on the claims operations, whether that's internally or with partners, where are you guys making a difference, Nick and Andrew? Where are you looking to make those wins in terms of profitability and operational costing that can impact the bottom line? Andrew, from your point of view.
Yeah, sure. I mean, look, for sure there is a multitude of solutions out there, right? That if we all had the investment, we had the money, we'd be like kids in a toy store, right? I'll take that, I'll take that, I'll take that. Then the integration of those solutions into your legacy platforms, and certainly from a Zurich perspective, we've got multiple, yeah. So there is that balance then of what you think is the right answer to the solution, and then how you're going to actually integrate that and make it work effectively, yeah. And the inherent cost then that you bake into having that, right? If you have monolithic legacy systems, they're not cheap, and they're not cheap, not A, to install, but equally then to keep the lights on. So for sure there is a number of different solutions out there, but I think we just need to be very careful and have that balance between, is some of this saturated, and picking the right partner for the right solution is key, yeah, to make sure that you're going to get that return on the investment. And with the speed of innovation, we all run the risk that what you think is the great thing today, in a month's time, something's even better, but you've already committed. And it's equal as well, just how far can you think ahead and make sure that you're future-proof, yeah, for it. The key thing as well is how you get that balance. For me and for Zurich comes back to that bionic workforce piece. It's about ensuring we have the right people with the right skills internally that know how to utilize these great tools, right? They are great tools. So not to be afraid of what the AI can do. I think this view that, everybody's going to be made redundant because the AI is going to take over. Well, not in my lifetime. But it's about making sure we've got the right people with the right skills, yeah. And very much what we're focusing on at Zurich is how we upskill and develop our people to do that. So the recruitment of people now into the claims arena isn't the traditional claims person that you would have recruited 30 years ago, right, when I joined. We're now looking for people with different skill sets that may be experience and knowledge in AI to be able to do that. People who are comfortable in working alongside artificial intelligence, yeah, so they're not afraid of it, they're embracing it. But also as well, I just think we've lost to encourage people to come into our industry, right? Do they see our industry as an industry for life, which I think we used to do some time ago? What are we doing to ensure that we attract the right people? And again, make it that insurance is relevant. You know, it is a career for someone long term. And so what do we need to do with that? You know, there's a phrase, I'm not going to take I'm not going to take credit for this, but someone said, if you want someone to do a good job, give them a good job to do. And I think over some time, we've started to drift away from that. And I think there's an opportunity now with the use of these tools to empower people to be able to make decisions. If you want that speed of answer, yeah. Nick referenced it earlier. It's a small word, but it's a critical word, and that word is no. We need to make sure that the right people in the claims function have the ability and the skills and the wherewithal to be able to make that call as soon as possible. Okay, the customer may not be happy, but right, if it's not covered, it's not covered. But do we have a tendency now with the segmentation and assignment that we've created that we pass that down the line? It's someone else's responsibility. And for sure, what we're looking to do within Zurich is to get back to upskilling. I say back to, we've always been an organization that's keen on training and developing. But alongside that, empowering people not to just follow a process, but to think beyond the process, to think for themselves, to have the right skills, to have the right opportunity to look at this as a career for the future, and not something that they'll just transition for a couple of years and then move on to something else. So there's a number of levers, Graham, that we're pulling to try and do that. But there is no one size fits all. For me, it's not technology being able to do it. There has to be a human in the loop as well. And again, it's that balance.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, it certainly sounds like you're pushing human-powered change as a key, you know, in terms of upskilling and letting individuals use AI as a tool within their context of intelligence, which they control ultimately, which I think is great, and I think that's right. Nick, from your point of view, I just wanted to, off the back of what Andrew was talking about there in terms of assessing any technology or innovation that will change your profitability. There's the assessment. There's also the integration, which Andrew mentioned, which can be sometimes easier than others. And you know, the pace of change. Are you making the right choices? It's difficult. How do you find it from your point of view when you look at bringing something in terms of that integration and change and selection process? Is that really difficult for you, or are you making decisions quite easily with your team on that, or what's the learning there?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the answer is it depends, right? And I will answer the question. But in terms of technology and what we're looking at within it, I don't know. A straightforward windscreen claim, for example, it's pretty much automated. I'll say this quietly, but I can ask Alexa to book me an appointment, and it's done. Saying it quietly because it will kick off in the living room and happen. But you know, we can automate that. Retail motor. A lot of that we can automate. There's technology with Control Expert, a business that Allianz Group owns, that will assess a vehicle, that will give a valuation. You can cash out in real time, and there's different markets across the globe that's culturally acceptable. UK and US, I think there's still a repair process that people like, or you know, that they want things fixing, and it goes through a repair network. But how are we looking to select our businesses? Some things are really easy to implement. You know, they're standalone, they're unique to the UK. So we've just partnered with PI Calculator in large loss, for example. And that will enable us to use big data on large claims to make more effective strategic decisions. Does it take away the claims handlers functionality? No, not at all. It complements it. So they're actually using data to make large loss decisions. Same in property, using drones to assess losses and evaluate the cost of that, so we give customers a cash out option. All of these things are quite quick. The return on investment stacks up really quickly. I think where it's more difficult is where, and I don't know if Andrew is on this journey, but Allianz certainly are, is looking to harmonize our data sets across the Allianz group. So we're all talking in the same language in terms of data, and then putting holistic claim systems and solutions over the top of that, and underwriting systems, and then using big data to make better risk appetite decisions as a business. And that is more challenging, very resource heavy, and the business case clearly does stack up because having big data, but the financial, the people that count the financial beans are keep saying, well, when am I going to see the return on this, because it needs to be on the balance sheet what year, so I can factor this in. So that is slightly more difficult to drive through. I think one of the things that we keep hearing about is sort of AI, ChatGPT. How do we automate the claims journey and the customer journey? I'm a bit on my high horse about this, really. It's not something I'm particularly passionate about. Where I want to be using AI and the sort of regenerative AI and this technology is in the background. So how can I get sustainable parts quicker? How can I get this customer with a lower CO2 emission to fix their vehicle? Why aren't we using it for some positive levers rather than just to try and reduce our expenses, which I don't think it really does. I think it frustrates customers. And I think it can be used for simple claims, but it's, as Andrew's point is, we need to understand where it adds the value for our business, but where it adds the value for the customer. Because one of your second question, I think, is balancing your sort of customer and your profitability. Where do they meet? I don't think they do meet. I think it's a really simple one. The customer comes first, because Andrew said, without customers, we don't have a business. Without business, we don't have profit. So it needs to all be built around the customer.
Thanks, Nick. I'll just ping back to you, Andrew, quickly, just to hear your reaction to that, in terms of if you sit in a similar seat to Nick around his attitude towards AI and how it can help an organization, some of the background work, how it can complement the expertise and experience of the employees, and also some comments on the big data conundrum and how you manage that. How do you compare to Nick there, Andrew?
So look, I mean, a phrase I've been coining lately is, I think with the pace of everything that's going on, and particularly around generative AI, I think the only absolute known right now is the amount of unknown. Everybody's talking about it, everybody's thinking it has a place, and it will, undoubtedly it will. But I think truly understanding where those use cases are to work and fit efficiently, I still think we're some way from that. Yeah. But for sure, the genie's out of the bottle. It's not going away. Within Zurich, we are embracing the GPT and the large language models piece. We've created our own internal solution, which we are piloting in certain units right now. We've got some real strong governance frameworks around it, so people aren't just running amok with it. It's got real tight control around it, which I think we need to ensure it's ethical. So we're embracing it, right? We're embracing it, as everybody is. Maybe a little bit with Nick, I'm at the point at this stage of, will it actually deliver everything that maybe people hope it will? Who knows? I'm a bit skeptical myself at the minute, but for sure it's there. It's going to be in our customers' everyday lives going forward. So we have to ensure we embrace it. In terms of the data piece, we talk about data lakes. Well, look, in our industries, we sit in data oceans, right? And it was interesting, Nick's point earlier around, the Allianz are now maybe asking for less data, because for me, it's we sit in these data oceans. What do we ultimately do with the data? And I think that's key. If it's not being used in the right way, then there's a lot of effort and a lot of cost that can be associated with it. But if you're not actually using it in a meaningful, profitable way, then you've got to question that. And for me, ultimately, claims, look, we need to become a data-rich environment, but we need to be enabling enhanced trend analysis and insights for informed underwriting and pricing decisions. You know, claims has a massive part to play in that, but that's where I think the big data piece comes.
Thanks, Andrew. Jeanette, I know you'll have quite a lot to say off the back of that, and I'll just ask you to park that until slightly later in the webinar. But just to backtrack a little bit, when we were talking about profitability versus customer experience, how do we make an impact on operational efficiency? What has your experience been on the technology side in terms of integration and integration processes, and how easy that might be sitting alongside established insurance carrier processes and infrastructures? Has Clearspeed found that an easy process to work inside an insurer and bring something new in, or what's been the experience? I know a lot of people would love to hear about that.
I think that for us, because of all the advances in the technology and then the optimization from that, it's much simpler for us to have conversations with carriers, understanding what your pain points are. Is it in the front end of the claim, the back end of the claim? So natural insertion points for our technology is when that adjuster, or even online, if they're doing online FNOL, is when you're setting the expectations for the claim process. So the sooner we can get into it and that information comes back, whether it's to an adjuster or an underwriter, that helps expedite the whole process. So it's really not challenging to find the insertion point. What's the challenge is what both Nick and Andrew have said. There's so many prioritizations for IT. Who gets to win, right? Because claims always ends up spending the money. And then when you have a different ask, you know, that's external, it gets prioritized in a different way. But Andrew hit on something that's really, really interesting. And I think when you look macro, you can look at your business, you can pick the best technology, you can have the greatest innovation internally. But if the adjusters don't adopt it, you have a problem, right? And I see that in every country that Clearspeed is in, as they look at this technology it's another data point and another decision point for the adjuster. And it really does empower them, where before it might be just all cookie cutter processing. If you do X, then the claim goes here or you pay it. Now they're receiving another data point that isn't overwhelming. It isn't something that has to be analyzed. It's a simple red-green that allows them to make a decision. But when we roll out with carriers, that's their number one concern, is in the point that you are inserting the technology, and whether it's us as Clearspeed or when you use technology, ultimately you're going to be looking at your process anyway somewhere down the line, but they are taking extra caution and extra investment in making sure that there's buy-in early and that the adjusters are able to test it out and feel it so that they know when they go live with it, they're not going to have any internal frictions. Because like you're saying, Nick, there's things we can control and things that we can't. That adjuster adoption, whether it's an internal process or it's an external partner, it's been a challenge for the 30 years I've been in the business, and it will continue to be a challenge. So I think it's something as simple as that. When you think about operational efficiencies, that's something not to be overlooked, right? There's always going to be that people component in our business.
Great. And I think that's a really important point. And I think the adjuster, how they change the way they work and their voice is really important. You know, huge investments are made. Do not underestimate the adjusters and the adjusting of the adjusters, let's say.
They're the one that touch the customer, right? So if they're not happy and delighted, then the customer's not happy and delighted. Yeah,
absolutely. Guys, perhaps you have in mind a couple of projects that you've been working on recently internally around this topic area that the audience would like to hear about. Nick, have you got something in terms of a recent project or initiative that you'd like to talk about for a couple of minutes?
Yeah, I'll talk about, I think, a sort of global. I'll make it global. I know we've got people from an international audience here rather than UK motor specific, but Allianz has a global mantra under the Allianz customer model, and it started off with just looking at holistic claims processes and how we sort of scale them across our wider group. I think the challenge with that was the implementation and adoption was quite subjective, shall we say, and the benefits obviously were controlled centrally. So what we look to do is wrap our IT around that. So we developed what's called the IT master platform, ITP, and then the business master platform. Sorry about these acronyms, but it's the way that Allianz works. So what I'm saying in short, really, is that we went through that journey that I've really talked about, and it's under the Allianz customer model umbrella. It started off quite simply about looking at simplifying our processes, which is great, and it's all wrapped around the customer. But unless you've got sort of the IT infrastructure that's aligned to that, and it's really clear that we need to do it in that order: process first, IT second, to make sure that it is complementary to the holistic thing that we want to do. So we've got the whole shebang now, if that makes sense. So what I've got the simplified process sitting at the top of the Allianz customer model. We've then got the internal and external assets that we need. So on-demand fraud score, video imagery, picture forensics, all the different things that you might need, APIs into suppliers, as Jeanette talked about, for loss adjusters, decision making in real time back into our business. And then through the middle of that is the IT infrastructure that enables all those things to do and to interact with each other. So the simple process, the next phase, the automation, the interaction with the external asset. And then you've got the data lake or ocean, as Andrew talked about it, which is less now, sitting underneath all that. So you've got the end-to-end data that feeds back into our underwriting carriers so that they can make better informed pricing and risk decisions. So we've got it all tied up together, and you can actually buy this product now externally. I don't want a sales pitch, but you can. We do sort of partner with other insurance carriers, where effectively you buy the claim system, you buy the data lake, you buy the supply chain that's already integrated with the existing APIs. So if you want to start underwriting business as a claim solution through the Allianz Group, that we can service.
Great, Nick. Sounds like a very complete, holistic view as well. Andrew, any recent projects, initiatives that you want to highlight to the audience that you've been working on?
Yeah, look, there is a lot, right? I've said about being customer focused and laser focused on that. So we have a dedicated customer office, and we're working closely with them to map out customer journeys, to set sort of CX standards, not just on the retail side, but also as well the commercial side. So we're rolling that out as well. We don't want to lose sight of our important commercial customers. Heavy focus on data and insights. We're investing a lot in that, looking at doing that internally. So there's a big project kicking off there. I talked about people development. So through our Claims Academy, we're doing more and more there to try and put online training modules to upskill our people and make that a better place for them to work. The whole sustainability piece is a big project for us, as I'm sure it is with Allianz. So there's a heavy focus on that, and the part that claims will have that in being like as I say, a truly sustainable organization. We are going to have a huge part to play going forward with that. Then I mentioned as well about our drive to build internal assets. So there's been a lot of projects in terms of we've built and successfully rolled out across multiple countries now our own internal fraud solution, which continues to grow and expand. I mentioned the GPT environment that's new and exciting. We'll see where that goes. We've also created and looking at where we can also plug in chatbots. So we've developed and created our own internal chatbot. And one that I'm personally excited about is we've created our own customer collaboration tool, which we call Hello Zurich, which is being used on both the claim side and on the underwriting side when you're onboarding, be it motor policy or a life policy. So there's a lot going on, Graham. Yeah, there's a lot of projects. Maybe you could argue too many, but yeah, we're busy, that's for sure.
Yeah, definitely very busy. And that last one sounds quite interesting. The Hello Zurich customer collaboration. I think that sounds like a whole nother webinar perhaps we can talk about, but sure. what is that essentially? What is that achieving?
So look, it's allowing us to interact with the customer at the very earliest opportunity. There's no need for apps or whatever else. It's just a direct link. And we can use it on any type of claim, right? So if you have say a large commercial loss, we've got the ability to have a multi-party functionality. So, you can't get on site, but your customer can. So you could have the customer, the broker, the loss adjuster, the risk engineer, the claims person, everybody on the same call, knowing day one, minute one, what you're dealing with.
Nice. Brilliant. Okay, Jeanette, we've heard quite a lot. There's so much going on. I mean, Nick and Andrew, huge organizations and huge responsibilities within those organizations. What are your sort of thoughts when we look back on claims operational efficiency, where insurance is, how technology can play a key part in assisting the insurance carriers, and how we move forwards? What are your thoughts?
I think it's really a challenge because of the change in the environment that we're in. More cats are happening. Our predictability of our business is starting to change as well, which ultimately affects the profitability. So I think having people who are able to be close enough to the day-to-day business. So you're looking at the efficiencies from a perspective where you say, this is always going to be a people task. So how do we make that the most efficient for the individual versus saying, here's the entire process. This person has 7 steps. Can we automate 4 of them to make them more efficient, whether it's handling more claims or underwriting more policies? But I think that's where the fine balance is really, really looking at the perspective, which to what Nick was saying earlier, you have to understand your data. So if you're looking at your data to have better insights to your business, great. If you have a hole where you have some part of your business where you can't see to make it more efficient, then perhaps you have to go outside to a partner or find an additional resource. But I think it's interesting that we're using 2 different terms, which are very similar and on the same kind of path, which big data came up, 10, 15 years ago when we started to get it. And everyone wanted it. And we all hoarded it, but we didn't really know what to do with it or how to use it in our business. I think that's the evolution of AI, right? I see people when we do demos, I can see them look up and start to try to put us in some type of bucket of what they think AI is. But there's the understanding and the natural progression of an organization. Is AI, front end? Is it really replacing a person or a task that a person can do? Or is it something like Clearspeed where it's embedded in our model way on the back end, where we still offer a data point for an adjuster to make a decision or an underwriter? So taking the organization as you build out all of these amazing programs that Andrew and Nick are doing, but taking time to kind of breathe a little bit and say, what is this and how do we use it within our organization? I think that's a challenge because we're running as fast as we can. We're doing all these prioritizations. We're doing all this, global innovation while we're doing things that we don't quite understand yet. So I think that's a challenge for all of us to be aware of. So these types of webinars where we can share, I think, become more and more important as we go through the evolution.
Thank you. I'm just looking at a couple of the questions, and perhaps Nick, you can make a comment on a question here around change within IT infrastructure, IT change. Do we have to go to that department and mix that up and innovate that? What can we do before we make, I guess what this question is looking at, what are the sort of low-hanging fruit areas of change that an organization can make operationally to make an improvement before going way guns into their legacy and IT and all of that sort of stuff?
Yeah, no, thanks, Gary. I think it's a great question. I think for me, IT doesn't come last. I think that's the wrong thing. We've been able to run profitable insurance businesses without IT without AI for many years. It's just becoming more competitive because of the external challenges that we see. For example, it's very difficult to secure budget for IT as well. As I've said, our financial directors want a return on investment this year, not in 5 years' time, because it impacts the balance sheet this year. And it's a harder sell to get an IT project that sits across sort of 5 years worth of balance sheet because it impacts our profitability, plain and simple. So I wouldn't say you look at IT last. I think you look at your IT infrastructure holistically. We have a team called Long Live Teams. It basically, is similar to Andrew, that if we are going to deliver something, it's not just sticky plaster anymore. It's actually going to be a sort of long, sustainable investment in the future of our IT infrastructure. But in answer to Gary's question, for me, the first thing that we're looking at is removing failure demand from our business. So Allianz, we put process on top of process on top of process, and these processes and these additional steps in the journey have normally been implemented through fear. We've dropped something, we've got leakage on this, we've been told off by somebody, we've done something wrong, there's been a complaint over here. So what we typically do as a risk carrier is we put an additional layer of governance on top of it. And what we're doing at the moment is stripping all of that back and just really simplifying our processes, getting rid of all the failure demand. So what I mean by failure demand is if it doesn't add value to the customer, so if they're chasing you and it's not about how have we paid their claim, it's not adding any value to that customer. So that anything that doesn't add the value to the paying the claim is an unnecessary step in the process. So everything is around that for us at the moment. It doesn't necessarily require IT investment. What it requires is actually challenging ourselves as leaders and insurance leaders to think differently. Why are we still measuring telephone abandonment rate as a success measure? Because we can answer every call if we wanted to, and do nothing with the customer's requirements. So what we should be doing is measuring ourselves against the success factors of the customer, and I think the two go hand in hand when you do that. So I think in answer to Gary's question, I think there's lots of things we can do without IT investment, and I think we should, because that's the stuff that we're empowered as claims people to crack on and do. All the other IT stuff requires a lot more stakeholders and a lot more hurdles to get over.
Thanks, Nick. I'd like to ask you the same question, and you can answer it if you'd like to. But there's just been another one pop up here, which perhaps you can address. And I feel like this has come from a slightly smaller insurance company. How do you keep your teams engaged in terms of delighting the customer, even when things are constantly changing, new technologies are coming in and going? How do you keep the team on board with the end goal?
Yeah,
is that for me, sorry, Graham or Andrew? Do
you want to go, Nick?
Yeah, so I think the way we do it at Allianz really is to get them to understand the why. I used to have a good a boss of mine always said, if you understand the why, then you feel more engaged. So why are we doing things? Let's make sure that people understand the why. Let's promote our success stories. Let's celebrate some of our fast failures as well. So we engage with our frontline staff all the time in understanding what their purpose is. We don't shy away from it. It is to all the things that we're doing around customer centricity, digital by default, growing our business, inclusive meritocracy. That are all underpinning our ability to grow our business, make money, and then we reinvest that money in new products, new opportunities, so we grow and they succeed with us. And our mantra at Allianz is we secure your future, and we believe that for our staff and for our customers. So I think the real simple question is total transparency, total honesty. I think people would rather know if they feel that some of their elements of their work are being replaced, and be transparent about why that is, because it frees them up to do more value-added tasks. And I think it is just a case of being totally transparent, totally honest with them, and get them to understand the why. Because some of the stuff we're talking about feels scary, but it's not really. It's actually cross-skilling people into slightly different roles, doing the same things, which is servicing our customers in the right way and paying claims. And that's what we're effectively here to do. I think it's quite simple.
Thanks, Nick. I know we're sort of running out of time here a little bit. Jeanette, can I come to you for your sort of final thoughts, a reflection on what we heard today? And actually, it would be good if you could just give us a very brief rundown on Clearspeed, what you guys really fundamentally do and impact with insurers, so we have that as a clear idea in our minds.
Sure, I'll start there because that's the easy one. So at Clearspeed, it's a tool that you can use in any part of the organization, underwriting or claims, where it's a simple, brief questionnaire. We identify 3 questions that are somewhere in your pain point or somewhere in your operational efficiency where you're trying to maximize not just the savings in the claims process, but also in the customer experience. But I think it goes back to the adjusters too. It empowers the adjuster to actually have a tool where they can make a decision, where many times the technology of the process has removed that for them. So it engages them in delivering that promise that's been sold to the customer. And really it's about that customer satisfaction that they're providing through the technology or the process or the interaction that keeps that customer coming back. That's really what we want. We want them to go through that claims experience, say our carrier was there for us. They did it in the most efficient way. And ultimately they put me back into the position that I was in prior to the loss, right? So Clearspeed, while we identify risk for an organization, what we're really finding globally is that we're able to help with that operational efficiency. So we're able to go in through the decision-making process from the results of the survey and say, now think of it as a highway. Now you're able to get off here at this exit or this exit based on the information that you received from Clearspeed, which you don't have unless you have a tool like this, right? Otherwise it becomes purely manual. It's all down to the underwriter or the claims adjuster to make that decision and have that time to do the decision. And that's the challenge. They have to do their job every single day with their pending of claims while taking on all of the organizational change from this optimization that's going on in all the organizations. And I think that's really the balance at the front line, is doing what you're supposed to be doing while still being able to engage with that customer based on your experience and expertise to make that experience the best that customer could have. So it's really interesting. The more countries that we go into, we're becoming an operational efficiency aid as much as a risk aid, a risk identification aid.
Thanks, Jeanette. Nick and Andrew, I'm just going to ask you a slightly different question to close. I know we were looking for a 1-minute reflection on the whole session, but I would be more interested to know if you guys left your organizations tomorrow, stepped into a 5-year-old insurance company that were looking at their operational efficiencies and making improvements, what would be the first thing that you would look at based on your experiences in huge organizations? Where would be the first place you'd look at to make some improvements? Andrew, you go first.
Yeah, sure. It's easy. You've got to be looking at that customer piece. You've got to make sure that whatever products you're selling are relevant to the customer's needs and demands. And if they're not, then that's where you really got to question that. And equally as well, to help drive that through, I don't think there's ever been more of a need for functions to collaborate, claims, underwriting, product development to deliver that. Because as I've said previously, as soon as we become irrelevant, we've got a problem.
Yeah, brilliant. Nick, what about you?
I'd agree with that firstly, and I think secondly, I'd do a data weighting exercise. And what I mean by that is looking at all the data within our organization, give it a prioritization status in terms of what are we using it for, challenge ourselves if we're not doing anything with it to why do we need it, and then use that data to build some more simplified machine learning models, which will support our customers and our staff and our people to empower them to support the customer journey. That'd be the second thing I'd do.
Brilliant. I just want to say thank you, Nick, Andrew, Jeanette. It's been really interesting, really insightful. If you'd like to stay connected, learn more, I'm sure Andrew, Nick and Jeanette wouldn't mind anyone contacting them on LinkedIn, connecting and carrying that conversation forward. To find out a little bit more about Clearspeed, just Google them. It's clearspeed.com. Have a look at what they're doing in the insurance space globally, how they're impacting operational efficiency through claims, underwriting, and across the whole ecosystem. We will see you again on another session soon in this claim series. Thank you for joining, and it's goodbye from all of us.
Thank you, Graham. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.